The hunt left at dawn. The king wanted wild boar at the feast tonight. Prince Geoffrey rode with his father, so Dad had been allowed to join the hunters as well. Uncle Benjen, John Roy, Theon Greyjoy, Sir Roderick, and even the Queen's funny little brother had all ridden out with him. It was the last hunt, after all. On the morrow they had left for the south. Bran had been left behind with Jon and the girls, and Rickon. But Rickon was only a baby, and the girls were only girls, and Jon had his wolf were nowhere to be found. Bran did not look at him very hard. He thought Jon was angry at him. Jon seemed to be angry at everyone these days. Bran did not know why. He was going with Uncle Ben to the wall to join the Night's Watch. He was almost as good as going south with the king. Robb was the one they were leaving behind, not Jon. For days, Bran could scarcely wait to be off. He was going to ride the King's Road on the horse on his own, not the pony, but the real horse. His father would be the Hand of the King, and they were going to live in a red castle at the King's Landing, the castle the Dragon Lords had built. Old Nan said that there were ghosts there, and dungeons were terrible things. Things had been done, and dragons had on the wall. It gave Bran a shiver just to think of it. He was not afraid. How could he be afraid? His father would be with them, the king with all his knights and sworn swords. Bran was going to be a knight himself some day, one of the king's guards. Old Nan said that they were the finest swords in all the realm. There were only 7 of them, and they wore white armor, and had no wives or children, but they lived only to serve the king. Bran knew all the stories. There were names like music to him. Serwyn of the Mirror Shield, Sir Raymond Red One, Prince Aemon, the Dragon Knight, the twins Sir Eric, Sir Eirik, who had died one another's sword hundreds of years ago. When brothers fought sisters in the war, the singers called the Dance of the Dragons, the White Bulls, Geralt the Hightower. Sir Arthur Dwayne, the Sword of the Morning, Barristan the Bald. 2 of the king's guards had come to the north with King Robert. Bran had watched them in fascination, never quite daring to speak to them. Sir Barros was a bald man with a jowl face, and Sir Meryn had droopy eyes and had a beard the color of rust. Sir Jaime Lannister looked more like the knights in all the stories, and he was the king guard, and he was of the king guards too. But Robb said he had killed the old Mad King, and shouldn't count anymore. The greatest living knights were Sir Barristan Salmy, Barristan the Bald, and Lord Commander of the King's Guard. Father had promised that they would meet Sir Barristan when they had reached King's Landing, and Bran had been marking the days on his wall, eager to depart, to see a world he had only dreamed of, and begin a life he could scarcely imagine. Yet now the last days was hard. The last day was at hand. Suddenly Bran felt lost. Winterfell had been the only home he has ever come to know. His father had told him that he had to say his farewells today, and he tried. After the hunt had ridden out, he wandered through the castle with his wolf at his side, intending to visit one of the ones who had been left behind. Old Nan engaged the cook, Mikken in his smithy, Hodor the stable boy, who smiled so much that took the care of his pony and never said anything but Hodor. The man in the glass gardens who gave his blackberry when he came to visit. But it was no good. He had gone to the stable first to see his pony. There and it saw, except it wasn't his pony anymore. He was getting a real horse and leaving the pony behind. And all of a sudden Bran just wanted to sit down and cry. He turned and ran off before Hodor and the other stable boys.
could see the tears in his eyes. That was the end of his farewell. Instead, Bran spent the morning alone in God's Wood, trying to teach his wolf to fetch a stick, and failing. The wolfling was smarter than any other of the hounds in his father's kennel, and Bran would have sworn he understood every word that was said to him, but he showed very little interest in chasing sticks. He was still trying to decide on the name. Robb was calling his Greywood because he ran so fast. Suzanne named hers Lady, and Aerin named hers after an old witch queen in the songs, and Little Rickon called his Shaggy Dog, which Bran thought was a pretty stupid name for the dire wolf. Jon's wolf, the white one, was Ghost. Bran wished he had thought of it first, even though his wolf isn't white. He tried 100 names in the last fortnight, but none of them sounded right. Finally, he got tired of the stick game and decided to go climbing. He hadn't been in the broken tower for weeks with everything that had happened, and this might be his last chance. He raced across the Godswoods, taking the long way around to avoid the pool where the heart tree grew. The heart tree had always frightened him. Trees had to not have eyes, Bran thought, or leaves that looked like hands. His wolf came sprinting at his heels. "You stay here," he told him, at the base of the sentinel tree near the armory wall. "Lie down. That's right. Now stay." The wolf did as he was told. Bran scratched him behind the ears, then turned away, jumped, and grabbed on a low branch and pulled himself up. He was halfway up the tree, moving easily from limb to limb, when the wolf got to his feet and began to howl. Bran looked back down. His wolf felt silent, staring up at him, slitted yellow eyes. A strange chill went through him. He began to climb once again. Once more the wolf howled. "Quiet," he yelled. "Sit down. Stay. You're worse than your mother." The howling chased him all the way up the tree, until finally he jumped off into the armory roof and out of sight. The rooftops of Winterfell were Bran's second home. His mother often said that Bran could climb before he could walk. Bran could not remember when he first learned to walk, but he could not remember when he started to climb either, so he supposed it must be true. To a boy, Winterfell was a great stone labyrinth of walls and towers, and courtyards and tunnels, spreading out in all directions. In the older parts of the castle, the halls slanted up and down, so you couldn't even be sure what floor you were on. The place has grown over the centuries like a monstrous stone tree. Mr. Luwin told him once that its branches were gnarled and thick and twisted, its roots sunk deep into the earth. When he got out from under and scrambled near the sky, Bran could see all of Winterfell in a glance. He liked the way it looked, spreading out beneath him, only birds wheeling over him while all the life of the castle went on below. Bran could perch for hours among the shapeless, rain-worn gargoyles that brooded over the first keep, watching it all, the men drilling with wood and steel in the yard, the cooks tending their vegetables in the glass garden, restless dogs running back and forth in the kennels, the silent of Godswood's girls gossiping beside the washing well. It made him feel like he was the lord of the castle, in a way even Robb would never know. It taught him Winterfell's secret, too. Though building had not even leveled the earth, there were hills and valleys behind the walls of the Winterfell. It was a covered bridge that went from the fourth wall to the bell tower across the second floor of the Rookie. Bran knew about that, and he knew that you can get inside the inner wall by the south gate, climb 3 floors and run all the way around Winterfell through a narrow tunnel in the stone, and then come out the ground level at the north gate, with 100 feet of wall looming over you. Even Magister Luwin didn't know about that. Bran was convinced. His mother was terrified that one day Bran would slip off the wall and kill himself. He told her that he wouldn't, but she never believed him. Once he told him a promise that he would stay on the ground. Once she said she made him a promise that he would stay on the ground. He had managed to keep his promise for almost a fortnight, miserable every day, until one night he had gone out the window of his bedroom when his brothers were fast asleep. He confessed his crime the next day in the fit of guilt. Lord Eddard ordered him to the God's Wood to cleanse himself. Guards were posted to see Bran remain there alone all night to reflect on his disobedience. The next morning, Bran was nowhere to be seen. They finally found him fast asleep in the upper branches of the Talus Sentinel in the grove. As angry as he was, his father could not help but laugh. "You're not my son," he said to Bran when he fetched him down. "You're a squirrel. So be it. If you must climb, then climb. But try not to let your mother see you." Bran did his best, although he did not think he'd ever really fooled her. Since his father would not forbid it, she turned to others. Old Nan told him stories about a bad little boy who climbed high and was struck down by lightning, and how afterwards the crow pecked out his eyes. Bran was not impressed. There were crows nesting atop broken towers, where no one has ever built, never went but him, and sometimes he filled his pockets with corn before climbing up there, and the crows ate it right out of his hands. None of them even ever shown the slightest bit of interest in pecking out his eyes. Later, Magister Luwin, a little poetry boy, built a little pottery boy and dressed him in Bran's clothes and flung him off the wall into the yard below, to demonstrate what would happen if Bran fell. That had been fun, but afterwards Bran just looked at Mester and looked, "I'm not made out of clay, and anyhow I never fall." Then for a while the guards would chase him whenever they saw him on the roofs, and try to haul him down. That was the best time of all like playing a game with his brothers, except Bran always won. None of the guards could climb half as well as Bran, not even Dryroy. Most of the time they never saw him anyway. People never looked up. That was another thing he liked about climbing. It was almost like being invisible. He liked how it felt too, pulling himself up the wall stone by stone, fingers and toes digging hard into the small crevices between. He always took off his boots and went barefoot when he climbed. It made him feel as if he had 4 hands instead of 2. He liked the deep sweet ache it left in his muscles afterward. He liked the way the air tasted up high, sweet and cold as winter peach. He liked the birds, the crows in the broken tower, the tiny little sparrows that nested in the cracks between the stones, the ancient owl that slept in the dusty loft above the old armory. Bran knew 'em all. Most of all, he liked going places that no one else could go, and seeing the gray sparrow of Winterfell in the way that no one else ever saw it. It made the whole castle Bran's secret place. His favorite haunt was the broken tower. It had been a watchtower, the tallest in Winterfell, a long time ago, 100 years before even his father had been born. A lightning strike had set it afire. Atop the third of the structure had collapsed inward, and the tower had never been rebuilt. Sometimes his father sent ratters into the base of the tower to clean out the nests, then always found among the jumble of the fallen stones and charred the rotten beams. But no one ever got to the jagged top of the structure now except for Bran and the crows. He knew 2 ways to get up there. You climbed straight upside of the tower itself, but the stones were loose, and the mortar that had held them together long gone to ash, and Bran never liked to put his full weight on them. The best way was to start from the God's Wood, shining to the tallest sentinel, and cross over the armory and the guards' hall, leaping roof to roof, barefoot on the guards, Wouldn't even hear you overhead. They brought you... That brought you up to the blind side of the first keep and the oldest part of the castle. A spot around the fortress was taller than it looked. Only rats and spiders could go up there to where the gargoyles leaned out blindly over the empty space, and swing from gargoyle to gargoyle, hand over hand, around the north side. From there, if you really stretched, you could reach out and pull yourself over to the broken tower it had leaned close. The last part was the scramble to get blackened stones from the eyries. No more than 10 feet, and then the crows would come around to see if you brought any corn. Bran was moving from gargoyle to gargoyle with ease at a long practice when he heard voices, so startled he almost lost his grip. The first keep had been empty all his life. "I do not like it," a woman saying. There was a row of windows beneath him, and a voice was drifting out the last window on the slide. "You should be the hand." "Gods forbid," the man's voice replied lazily. "It's not an honor I'd want. There's far too much work involved." Bran hung, listening, suddenly afraid to go on. They might glimpse his feet if he tried to swing by. "Don't you see the danger this puts us in?" the woman said. "Robert loves the man like a brother. Robert can barely stomach his brother. Not that I blame him. Santinus would be enough to give anyone indigestion. Don't play the fool. Sanus and R'lyeh are one thing, and Eddard Stark is quite another. Robert will listen to Stark. Damn them both. I should have insisted that he name you, but I was certain Stark would refuse him." "We have to count ourselves fortunate," the man said. "The king might easily have named one of his brothers, or even Littlefinger. God help us. Give me honorable enemies rather than ambitious ones, and I'll sleep more easily by night." Then they were talking about father, Bran realized. He wanted to hear more. A few more feet, and they would see him if he swung out of in front of the window. "We will want to watch him carefully," the woman said. "I would sooner watch you," the man said. He sounded bored. "Come back here." Lord Eddard had never taken any interest in anything that happened south of the Neck, the woman said. "Never, I tell you. He means us to move again." "Why else would he leave the seat in his power? 100 reasons. Duty, honor. He yearns to write his name large across the book of history. To get away from his wife, or both. Perhaps he just wanted to be warm for once in his life. His wife is Lady Aeron's sister. It's a wonder Lysa was not here to greet us with her accusations." Bran looked down. There was a narrow ledge beneath the window, only a few inches wide. He tried to lower himself toward it. Too far, he would never reach. "You fret too much. Lysa Arryn is a frightened cow. That frightened cow shared Jon Arryn's bed. If he knew anything, she would have gone to Robert before she fled the King's Landing. When he had already agreed to foster that weakling son of hers at Castrol Rock. I think not. She knew the boy's life would be the hostage to her silence. She may grow bolder now that he's safe atop Eyrie. Mothers, the man made the words sound like a curse. "I think birthing does something to your minds. You're all mad," he laughed. It was a bitter sound. "Let Lady Arryn grow as bold as she likes, whenever she likes to know, whatever she wants. Whatever she knows, whatever she thinks she knows, she has no proof." He pauses a moment. "Or does she? Do you think the king will require proof?" The woman said, "I tell you, he loves me not." "And whose fault is that, sweet sister?" Bran studied the ledge. He could drop down. It was too narrow to land on. but if he could catch as he fell past, pull himself up, except that might make a noise, draw them to the window. He was not sure what he was hearing, but he knew it was not meant for his ears. "You are as blind as Robert," the woman said. If you mean I see the same thing, yes," the man said. "I see a man who would sooner die than betray his king." "He betrayed one already, or have you forgotten?" the woman said. "Oh, I don't deny his loyalty to Robert. That's obvious. What happens when Robert dies and Joff takes the throne? And the sooner that comes to pass, the safer we'll all be. My husband grows more restless every day. Having struck beside him will only make him worse. He's still in love with the sister, that invalid dead 16-year-old. How long till he decides to put me aside for some new Lena?" Brent was suddenly very frightened. He wanted to know nothing as much to go back as he once had come. To find his brother. Only what would he tell them? He had to get closer, Brand realized. He had to see who was talking. The man sighed. "You should think less about the future and more about the pleasures at hand." "Stop that," the woman said. Brand heard sudden slaps of flesh on flesh, then the man's laughter. Brand pulled himself up, climbed over the gargoyles, crawled out onto the roof. That was very easy. He moved across the roof next to the next gargoyle, right above the window of the room where they were talking. "All this talk is getting very tiresome, sister," the man said. "Come here and be quiet." Brand sat astride the gargoyle, tightened his legs around it, and swung himself around, upside down. He hung his legs and slowly stretched his head down towards the window. The world looked strange upside down. The courtyard swam dizzily below him. Its stones were wet with melted snow. Brand looked inside the window. Inside the room, a man and a woman were wrestling. They were both naked. Brand could not tell who they were. The man's back was to him, and his body screened the woman from view as he pushed her against the wall. There were soft, wet sounds. Brand realized they were kissing. He watched wide open and frightened, his breath tightened in his throat. The man had a hand down between her legs, and they must have been hurting her, because the woman started to moan low in her throat. "Stop it," she said. Stop it, oh please." But her voice was low and weak, and she did not push him away. Her hands buried themselves in her hair. In his hair, his tangled golden hair, and pulled his face down her breasts. Brand saw her face. Her eyes were closed and her mouth was open, moaning. Her golden hair swung side to side as her head moved back and forth, but still he recognized the queen. He must have made a noise. Suddenly her eyes opened, and she was staring right at him, screaming. She screamed. Everything happened at once. The woman pushed away the man wildly, shouting and pointing. Brand tried to pull himself up, bending double as he reached for the gargoyle. He was in too much of a hurry. His hands scraped uselessly across the smooth stone, and in his panic his legs slipped, and suddenly he was falling. There was an instant of vertigo as a sickening lurch as the window flashed past. He shot out and grabbed for the ledge. He lost it, caught it again with the other hand. He swung against the building hard. The impact took his breath out of him. Brand dangled, one-handed, panting. Faces appeared in the window above him. The queen, and now Brand recognized the man beside her. They looked so much alike as a reflection in the mirror. "He saw us," the woman said shrilly. "So he did," the man said. Brand's fingers started to slip. He grabbed the ledge with his other hand. Fingernails dug into the unwieldy stone. The man reached down. "Take my hand," he said, "before you fall." Bran seized his arm and held on tight with all his strength. The man yanked him up on the ledge. "What are you doing?" the woman demanded. The man ignored her. He was very strong. He stood Bran up on the sill. "How old are you, boy?" "7, Bran said, shaking with relief. His fingers had dug deep gouges in the man's forearm. He let go sheepishly. The man looked over at the woman. "The things I do for love," he said with a frothing. He gave Bran a shove. Screaming, Bran went backwards out the window into the empty air. There was nothing to grab onto. The courtyard rushed up to meet him. Somewhere off in the distance a wolf was howling. Crows circled the broken tower, waiting for corn.